The organisation I represent is called Climate Kick. We were created 15 years ago by the European Commission to build the field of climate entrepreneurship, climate innovation, climate solutions in Europe. And we now work in 60 countries doing that, mitigation, adaptation. So the example that I want to come to is a real thing. It's happening now in Europe. There's a major initiative afoot that we are now involved in, which is 112 cities formally committing to completely decarbonise in 7 years. I'm talking Paris, Madrid, Rome, Amsterdam. They've signed a contract, and this is net zero by 2030. When you start to add up across those 112 cities, the amount of green steel, green plastics, green logistics, green cement, green food supply chains that they need, you begin to look, finally, at the shape, scale, and size of the next generation of economies that we need. And finally, you begin to see the directional signal, the scale, the aggregate, the pace, and the interrelated effect, or at least the demand for interrelated effects that we need. Now the challenge comes, how on earth do you get the financial system to come in behind this and enable and structure the innovations that are there? Part of it is structural. You need a portfolio approach, a place-based, structured portfolio of deliberately created relationships among the multiple solutions we need to combine. So if you do take, for example, Madrid, we need, and we are working on, a portfolio that brings together the nature-based materials needed for cladding to retrofit thousands of buildings, the digital infrastructure to connect in-home healthcare, efficient energy, the water and waste solutions, green roofs to deal with heat islands, the ways in which you deal with the mobility and transport system so that indeed it is not about substituting individual vehicles but changing the entire mobility system, and so on. So you need a place-based portfolio. And what above all you're looking to do is bring in multiple hundreds of solutions into relationships with one another. And at that point, all of a sudden, you've got an investable opportunity. These elements mutually reinforce or have the potential to mutually reinforce. It is absolutely about a capital stack. It's about bringing in multiple forms of capital. This is not only about individual private wealth. Let me go back to that example of Madrid. Madrid needs 10 to 15 billion per year in the next 7 years to pull this off. But it's institutional capital, it's sovereign wealth. Think about the underlying land value of property that accelerates this degree of demonstration of next generation sustainable businesses, energy democracy, buildings that start to create energy, that create regenerative food systems, that deal with heat, that reduce the underlying heat effects, that begin to reduce the underlying risk of climate. They begin to acquire a value that is very, very different. How do we think about securitizing that value and pulling it forward through the ways in which we begin to invest behind it? And this goes to the key part in systemic that is in part about holistic effects. How do you take the entire system? Because that has a set of mutually reinforcing positive dynamics. And one of the net effects of working at this scale is to start to learn, if you invest here, 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 and here, you catalyze speed. You catalyze interconnection, you catalyze acceleration. You do what is called crossing positive tipping points and starting to build market dynamics that really feed each other. We will have to transition our economies. The question here is, if you're a holder of capital, a manager of capital, a human being who cares to bring economic resource, prosperity, and human activity together in the next generation of economic systems, do you wait? Do you shape? Do you create? Do you scramble behind? Or do you fall out? Because every single day you are making that choice. If you get in early and you shape, you are putting yourself in a position to learn. Madrid does not know how to become net zero in 7 years, fully. It has a bunch of hypotheses, and when you start to combine them, all sorts of unintended consequences come about, because these are complex systems, and they're complex because we are in them, and we are messy. So it is about getting in and learning, taking positions, and above all, investing behind the capacity of those positions to learn from one another. So the combinatorial effects are not just aggregate effects, they're transformational effects. And that is fundamentally a mechanism of de-risking. The least risky way of getting ourselves in and through the profoundly disruptive world that we are right now in is to damn well get in there and help us learn together how these things combine and how they have transformative effects together. And the best way to get in and learn is to get in behind them and participate. It's about shifting our thesis from thinking that we know, waiting, looking to back the winners and getting into the VHS versus beta game in a world where the scale, complexity and interrelatedness of change is so far beyond linear that our best possible bet is do it the other way. Embrace the whole lot, pull in behind them, invest in relationships, look for structuring the rules and learn faster than the pace of change.